definition of contract and contract law. Let's go ahead and look at the several types of contracts. Let's look at this one right here on the slide right here. Now, the difference between a unilateral contract and a bilateral contract. Now, we all know what a bilateral contract is. You know, I sell the house for you, you give me the commission. That is a bilateral contract. But unilateral contract is only one party. So an example of that would be, if you find my pet, I have a lost pet, if you find my pet, I will pay you this much. You find my wallet, I'll pay you this. This is a unilateral contract. Express contract is, it's either in verbal or written. So let me give you an example. Let's say you hire a contractor to put up a fence. It's a verbal and written, okay? So that's an express contract because you have an agreement. But let's say you have no agreement, okay? You did not tell the contractor to do anything, but the contractor comes over, drops the lumber on your front yard, you looked at the lumber and you did not do anything. The fact that you did not do anything, you have an implied contract. By your very action, you're saying, okay, go ahead with the project, because you didn't do anything. Now, executory is when you have, it's in process. That means, let's say you put in an earnest money, deposit money. You've put the deposit money, you still have many more processes. You still have to go through contract, agreement, and all that stuff. You haven't finished yet, and that you have an executory contract. But once the escrow has closed, that means everything is intact and is ready to be, is already done, then you have an executed contract. What makes up a contract? What makes up a contract? And there are 4 types of contracts. There's a valid contract, and voidable contract, unenforceable, and void. We're going to come back in just a few minutes, but I want to go with the valid first and show you how it works. The valid contract must have the 4 elements, and the 4 elements is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola means this. Now this is a little bit not in order, but Coca-Cola means consent. Okay? Consent is agreement. You have to agree for, if I hire you, I will do this for you, then that would be a consent. Capability of the party, that means you have to be 18 or over, all right? Code, consideration. Now consideration doesn't have to be money, it can be love. So if I want to give you the house because of love, you can do that, that's under consideration. And lawful objection, meaning whatever you do, it has to be within the law. Within the law. That means you can't charge excessive interest rate. If, let's say all the interest rate are going at 4% and you're charging at 12%, you are under a lawful objection. You have no contract at this point. It has to be within the law, whatever you do. Let's go back to this part right here now. Okay, let's go back right here. All right, now, valid means the Coca-Cola, all 4 elements have to occur. That's easy. Void means one of the elements is missing. And we will go over in class some of the scenarios, but right now you need to know what these means. Now, voidable is a very, hard thing to understand, so let me explain this, I hope this more clearly. Voidable means this. If you have a misrepresentation, I said the word fraud. Fraud means misrepresentation. That means you, the listing agent says the square footage is 1,000 and it's really 800. You have a voidable contract because you misrepresented. The other word I said was duress. Duress doesn't mean you put a gun to you. Duress means bait and switch. That means I said, hey, you got a great deal. It's going to be, we're going to offer you, $50,000 less or whatever, but we bait you and then we switch and we did something else. That will be avoidable contract. That means you went into contract, but because you found out you were misled by this information, you reject the contract, and this becomes avoidable contract. Unenforceable contract means it has to be, let's say if you had an oral contract, and then you think that would suffice, but it's not. You have to have it in writing. Or if it needs one signature, it has one signature, but it needs two signatures. Or if it's signed by a minor, that's unenforceable in court. So those are the things right over here. Now let's come back over here, and on your handout, we have also what is called actual fraud and constructive fraud. Actual fraud means if the seller says that the roof is in perfect condition, but the roof actually leaks, and he knows it. So you sue him for actual fraud because he has an intentional fraud, okay? Constructive fraud would be unintentional. In this case, the seller's agent didn't know the fact and said the same thing the seller told him, and he was unintentionally defrauding you, so that he had a constructive fraud. Specific performance is this. Let's say you are in contract, and almost for the end of close of escrow, the seller changes his mind. He doesn't want to do this anymore, okay? You as a buyer, you want the house. You want the house, and you sue him. You sue him in court under what is called specific performance, and the judge will come in and force the seller to go ahead and sell the house to you. That's specific performance. Lastly, the statute of limitation. You can read it. It's not something you have to memorize, but something for you to learn. Something about, remember the encroachment, you have 3 years of the statute of limitation, 4 years on all real estate contracts. It must be kept in file for 4 years. But the rest you can go ahead and you read it. We're on the chapter of sales contract. We're going to talk about two of them. The first one is called a land contract, or another word is called installment sales contract. Land contract is not about land. What it is this. It's, before I go into this one, I want to just share with you on the names of the parties. Land contract is considered personal property, and the parties' names are, the vendor is the seller, the vendee supposedly is the buyer. So let me give you a scenario. Let's say the vendor, the seller, wants to sell you the house. You can go ahead and move in, live in the property, and you're the vendee. You're on the property, but you don't get title to the property. The vendor has legal title. That means that's his title. You don't get the title until you pay up on the loan. Meanwhile, the vendee has equitable title. You will learn more about this in finance, but you need to know what land contract is. The other kind of contract is called lease option. Again, the parties' names are different as well. The optionor is the owner, the optionee is the buyer. Now, there's a lease option with the right to purchase, and the way it works is this. Let's say you are renting this place, and the optionor, the landlord, is saying, you will be the first to have the option to buy this property. Okay? You can have this, but you need to put aside some money for the deposit money. So let's say your rent is $1,000, you put aside $500 for the deposit. And when the time comes, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you are the first to buy the property. Now, the lease option with the right to purchase, meaning the time of that option that's given to you, the time of that option, the price, the sales price is already intact. That means, let's say right now the market value is $1 million. Let's just say that. You will buy the house for $1 million. If it goes up to 1.5 million, you still buy the house at 1 million, and that is called a right to purchase. Listing agreements. There are 3 types of listing agreements. All right. The first one is the open listing, and then you have the exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell. Exclusive right to sell is in California. So let's go over these 3, okay? Open listing means you have one owner, and one owner, but he can hire numerous brokers to list his house and find a buyer. If the owner finds a buyer himself, he owes no one the commission. Okay, that's open. Exclusive agency means the owner hires only one broker to find a buyer. But again, if the owner finds the buyer himself, the broker gets nothing. But the exclusive right to sell means this, it's guaranteed. So even though if the owner finds a buyer for himself, he owes commission to the broker no matter what. And that's the listing agreement. All right, we continue with listing and so forth. Now, there's a thing called the safety clause in your handout. Safety clause means this. Let's just say you are the listing agent. You're hired to list this property. However, let's say you have, within 2 weeks, the owner fires you. He fires you because maybe he doesn't want to pay you any commission, because all the people that you brought in, he could go ahead and approach those potential buyers and save himself the commission to pay you. So the safety clause is tagged on into the agreement. The safety clause says, if you fire me, if you terminate me, I have, and you specify 90 days, 120 days, whatever, I have the right to that commission if you close with the same people or person that I brought in. And that's why it's safety to you, the listing agent. The liquidated damage is this. Liquidated damage is the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues of buyers is the getting back their deposit money. So the question is, when and how and in what condition can you get your deposit money? Now, if you have, the word is contingency. Contingency meaning conditions. Whenever a buyer comes in, he has a lot of conditions. He has the appraisal to do, inspection, lender's conditions, and so forth. As long as those conditions, contingencies are outstanding, it's still out there, he can walk out and get his deposit money, earnest money. But if he has satisfied all the conditions and he wants to get out, he has what is called the breach of contract. Once he has a breach of contract, he cannot get the money back. So the question is, how much can the seller keep the deposit money? So looking at your handout, he can keep up to 3% of the sales price. So if the sales price is $100,000, the seller can keep $3,000. So the example, if the buyer puts down $2,000, the seller can only keep $2,000. Okay. If the seller puts down the buyer puts down $4,000, the seller can only keep $3,000. It's up to 3%. Let's talk about disclosures. There is one called the Transfer Disclosure Statement, the TDS, and this must be completed by the seller. The seller must disclose all known facts of the property. Even if he's selling as is, he still has to complete the TDS. There's also another thing called death. The listing agent or the owner must disclose if there's a death within 3 years of the listing, except AIDS. If the person died of AIDS in that property within 3 years, the owner does not have to disclose the cause of death. AIDS is one death that he does not have to disclose. There are also on your handout many disclosures. agent's inspection disclosure, environment, natural hazard, common interest. Those are disclosures. It's already in part of that listing package. Sex offenders. On the TDS, if the listing agent has known facts that the seller is a sex offender, he cannot disclose that he's a sex offender. He can only say no children allowed to the open house. He cannot say the neighbor is a sex offender. What he can do is provide a crime report. There's a website that I have given you, 2 of them. You are to give the website to the buyer and let them make an educated judgment on that. Advertisement. New law now regarding advertisement. Now the agent, if you give out a card, a flyer, whatever, not only do you have to give your name and license number, you also have to give the broker's name. The option is a broker's license number. That's an optional thing. There's a reason behind this, is that a lot of times if there is a dispute, the party, the consumer, wants to know who is the actual person in contact. And lastly, regulation of unlicensed person. If you are unlicensed and you pretend you are licensed and you get caught, you are fined $20,000. Okay? For sale by owner. Okay. For sale by owner, he can sell his house by himself. He doesn't really need to have an agent. But he still has to fill out the TDS, the Transfer Disclosure Statement. Real estate finance, and there are 2 types of lenders, institutional lender and non-institutional lender, and let me just go over that. All right, institutional lender, you have commercial bank. Commercial banks are your, they mostly do construction loans, short-term commercial banks. Savings and loans are really, they are the ones who lend you for your homes, home loans. And they're the first to develop your amortization schedule, the 30-year amortization schedule, and the first to service your loan. Servicing your loan meaning when you have a mortgage payment monthly, they send you a bill. That's the savings and loan started that. Life insurance companies are much more of commercial and industrial. They handle mostly like malls and huge constructions of properties. So that's life insurance. Now let's look at non-institutional lenders. There's non-institutional lenders. We talked a little bit about the private lenders. Private lenders are your hard money loan. Hard money loan means, let's say a borrower cannot find any lender to lend him money. So he goes to a private lender, and the private lender actually, the money comes from investors. You and I are investors. Let's say the interest rate now is, your bank is going for 1%. The private lender will give you 10% for the interest for lending out your money. That's a hard money lender. And mortgage companies, the difference between a broker and a banker. A broker is a wholesaler. That means he doesn't really have money. For example, you're a broker, but I broker out money from Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Banker actually has a credit line, a line of credit and money, investor money, investors' money in their account. So they actually can fund the loan very quickly, and the criteria, guidelines for qualifying for the loan is under their auspices, not under the broker, not under the Wells Fargo and Bank of America. Now, real estate, it's called the REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. This was, this is sort of like a stock. And you can buy this REIT on the stock market, the Wall Street. and they only invest in properties that are, they're mostly investment in large properties. And a lot of times REIT works very well when the stock market is not going well. But when the stock market is going well, then people transfer their money to the other stocks. So this is only for, it's right now the real estate market is going very well. So this is something that you might look at. Credit union is more of the, they focus on investment properties and so forth. I'm sorry, not investment. The credit union focuses on giving you home loans, and the money comes from depositors' money, and that is the credit union. All right, we're now in the topic of finance and the type and the loan products. The first one I want to introduce you to is called the buy down. Now this is a little difficult concept, so let's go ahead and go over slowly. There is a thing called a permanent buy down and a temporary buy down. So let's go over this here. So you have a permanent buy down. That means the note rate means what is really, this is the real rate, okay? So right now the rates are going for 6.5%. All right, your payment, P&I means principal and interest. So your monthly is $632 a month. All right, so there we go, minimum fees, and qualify for a lower rate. Now let's go ahead and stay over here. But you said I want to save money. I've got enough money to buy down the interest rate to 5.5%. Okay, well 5.5, and I have to pay $5,000 for this thing. But I save quite a lot. How much do I save? $64. But my monthly, mortgage monthly is a little bit less. All right. Now, the advantage to this is that the lower your interest rate, you qualify at a higher loan amount. The higher interest rate, you qualify at a lower loan amount. Advantages and disadvantages. So, you pay a high fee, okay? You pay a high fee. The only thing I would say for this program is that if you intend to stay there for 30 years, then it's worth it. But if you're going to move and refinance within, 10 years or 5 years, this money would not be worth it. So that would be a permanent buy down. The second one is a temporary buy down. Here's a temporary buy down right here. Temporary buy down means I don't want to spend $5,000, I want to just spend a little bit less, okay? So here it is. This is called a 2-1 buy down. And there are many programs. There are 3-1 buy downs. So this one's 2-1 buy down. The loan amount's $100,000. The note rate, the real rate is 6.5. Okay? The note rate's still about half. See, the fee is about $1,000 now. It's not that much. But you start off at 4.5%. So here it works. The first year, you are at 4.5 now. First year, 4.5. Second year, 5.5. And the third year thereafter is 6.5 note rate. Notice, the first year, you only pay this much. You save about $125. Second year goes a little bit, you save a little bit less. And then therefore, third year thereafter. You qualify, the great thing about buy down is that you qualify at a lower rate. The lower rate, you qualify at a higher loan amount. The next product I want to introduce you to is called the adjustable rate mortgage, the ARM. And we want to just make sure you understand what it is first. ARM is, the rate is comes from index plus margin. The index always fluctuates. It depends on whether it's Treasury or LIBOR or what. The margin is the profit that the lender makes, and that equals the rate. So, but how does it all work? So let me show you how this works. Okay, example A, activity A. The rate adjustment, we're meaning, this is a 3-1 program. That means a 3-year fix, and then it starts to adjust. Every year it starts to adjust, okay? You start off at 4%. Once it adjusts 1% every year until it has a lifetime cap of, this is called a lifetime cap. I'm going to show it to you in a few minutes, okay? Alright, now, 3-year fixed. On the 4th year, what is the rate? So, you start off at 4%, and you add 1%. You see that 1 right there? 1%, it becomes 5%. So, the next year, the 4th year, you have 5%. Then the 5th year, you do the same thing. 5% plus 1% is 6%. Okay? It keeps on going 1% every year. So what would be the lifetime cap? So you start off at 1%. Your lifetime is 6%. So 4 plus 6 is 10%. You cannot adjust more than 10%. So that's your lifetime cap. Here's another example right over here. Let me just go ahead and do this right here. Example B would be, this is a 2.5. Adjustment is 2.5. The program is a 5-year fix and then it adjusts. Question. Now remember the start rate is 3%. So what is the rate for the 6th year? So you have 3%, the first start rate, but adjust every 2% now. So this is a different program, okay? Adjust 2% every year, so 2% is 5%. On the 7th year, from 5, again 2% comes from this right here, 7%. Now, this 5 is called the lifetime cap. So what's the lifetime cap? You start off at 3% plus 5. You cannot not go over 8%. That will cap you right there, lifetime cap. And that is the ARM product. So far we talked about rate adjustment, but this one is about payment adjustment. What happens if the buyer decides to pay only the amount that he can pay? So let's look at the slide. Here it is. The borrower has a start payment of $1,000 a month, and it's the payment adjustment, the 2nd year is $1,800 a month, but the borrower decides to pay only $1,000. The question is, well, what happens to the $800? Well, he's actually borrowing against himself, and the $800 is added to the loan balance, which creates what is called a negative amortization. And this was the problem with the financial crisis because everybody was having this negative amortization. Another product we're going to talk about is called the reverse annuity mortgage. It's called RAM. And RAM is really for someone who's over 62 years old, and you can either take a monthly payment for life or you can take a lump sum. I do want to specify that if the borrower is late on utilities or property tax or even late on the HOA, they can foreclose on you. So be careful with that one. You can terminate by either selling it, moving to another place, or death. So that's the way to terminate. But the 2 programs that I want to discuss is the FHA Home Equity Conversion Mortgage, called the HECM. HECM is for those who have existing homes, who has a lot of assets, but who have a lot of debts as well. So this is a program for them to actually, the HECM will pay the borrower, the owner, a certain amount for life. We'll talk about that a little bit more in class. The second one is called it's a Fannie Mae product. It's Home Keeper for Home Purchase. And what this is that it's a very interesting program. What it is that if someone was going to sell their property and they want to move to closer to their grandchildren or whatever, they can actually take out this Home Keeper for Home Purchase, put down 50% down, and enter this program. And what happens is that it reverses itself. The payment, the buyer doesn't have to pay any mortgage for the rest of her life or his life, because this program will pay the mortgage for him or for her, or for the life. So this is a great program, a marketing tool and your instructor will talk more about this. So far we talked about programs that are conventional loans. Now we're going to talk about government loans. Government loans are non-conventional programs. And so we're going to start with the FHA. Now FHA, the history behind that is, it started with Title I. It really was intended for repairs. They were small loans. But because these loans were so popular and so marketable, that the government decided to expand the loan amount. This is called a Title II, and FHA came about at this point. Now you do have to be owner-occupied for FHA. In your handout, they talked about direct endorsement. A direct endorsement means if let's say a lender or a broker, whatever, decides to be a dedicated FHA lender, and what the government will do is give them all rights of underwriting and funding rights. That's called the direct endorsement. All FHA is it's like a mortgage insurance. MMI is mutual mortgage insurance that backs up the any type of foreclosure. Then MMI steps in. When you take an FHA loan, you have to have what is called an upfront mortgage insurance, MFMIP, and you pay that upfront, but that upfront amount can be wrote into the loan. And one more thing is that all government loans, including FHA, VA, and CalVet, are assumable. Assumable meaning if you have the current existing borrower has a loan, someone else can take over that person's loan and carry on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. The second government loan, non-conventional loan, is the VA loan. Now the VA loan, with that, you have to begin with what is called the eligibility. You have to have a DD-214 showing that you have gone to the service and proof of that. Now FHA has what is called direct endorsement. VA has what is called automatic endorsement. It's the same type of concept in that the lender dedicated to doing VA loans has the priority of funding and underwriting the loan, and they have what is called automatic endorsement. Now the difference between VA and FHA is that VA is a guaranteed loan. There is no mortgage insurance. When there is a foreclosure, the government will step in and guarantee 25% of the loan to make up that loss. Okay. Another thing you want to learn is it's called the Certificate of Reasonable Value, CRV. Remember that acronym because associate CRV with VA. When you do have a VA loan, you have to go through their appraisal and their CRV appraisal to do the value of your property. So it has to be done. And also too is a residual income. That means they have a different type of qualification. VA looks at what you have, what is called, they want you to make so much money and you have to have so much debt, but they also have residual, meaning you have to have so much left over to qualify for that. There's a formula for that one as well. Again, it can be assumed, it's an assumable just like a FHA. The last non-conventional loan, government loan, is CalVet. This is California Veterans Program. And essentially, CalVet is similar to VA except for two things. CalVet is a land contract. Remember, FHA and VA are trustees and they have legal title. That means when you take over the property, you immediately have title. But CalVet is a land contract. That means you don't have title until you actually pay off the loan. You actually have equitable title. The second difference is the assumability. Now remember, VA and FHA, another party can assume the current borrower's existing loan, anyone can assume that loan. But CalVet is a little different. CalVet, only CalVet applicants can assume a CalVet loan. We talked a lot about government loans, and we're going to end with a government loan, creation of a secondary market. And what this means is that there is a primary market and there's a secondary market. And let's look at the slide. Okay, the primary market is like your B of A or Wells Fargo. Those are the lenders that will lend it to you. But most of the time, majority of the time, the primary lender will sell the loan and sell it to the secondary market. The secondary market is backed by the government. So the two, we're just going to do these two and just memorize the acronym. So you have a Fannie Mae, and memorize the acronym, Federal National Mortgage Association, and then the Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation. They are both A-paper loans. That means you do have to be good with your credit and income and debt and so forth. The Fannie Mae is that it is really truly an A-paper loan. That means that this is the lowest interest rate you'll get. Freddie Mac has a little bit of a dent or maybe a taint with your credit or whatever, and the interest rate may be 1/8% higher. But both are under A-paper. I want to talk a little bit about assumption loans and how that really works. In your handout, now, most of the time assumption loans or subject to loans are offered through government loans. But based on the handout, let me just show you how that works, okay? All right, now, assumption loan, again, buyer's responsible in case of default. Subject to is seller is responsible in case of default. So, you have to assume a loan under this category. Assuming meaning you take over someone else's loan. Now, assumption loan, when buyer's liable, this is mostly under conventional lenders. Conventional lenders are your B of A, Wells Fargo. It's not a government loan. However, this product is very rarely available under conventional loan. This product you can't find it too much. However, subject to loan, where seller's liable, this is available in the government loans, your FHA, your VA, and so forth. Subject to means in case someone assumes someone else's loan. Let's say the buyer assumes the seller's loan, and the buyer defaults. If under the government loan, the seller is responsible because it's a subject to loan. Okay? What if the buyer does not assume the loan? Well, then if the buyer doesn't assume the loan, he goes with conventional or government and whatever that product is, as if it's a new loan. So all this does not even apply. How is the lender protected in the event of foreclosure? Remember, FHA has an MMI, Mutual Mortgage Insurance, and they have a mortgage insurance. But VA is protected because it is a guarantee loan. It's a guarantee in case there's a foreclosure, the government will step in and pay 25% of the loan amount. Okay? When is title transferred? Under a conventional loan, it's a trustee. It's transferred immediately after closing. FHA and VA is a trustee. Transfer immediately after closing. CalVet is the only one that's a land contract. Remember, land contract has equitable title. The government holds title until the borrower pays off the loan. All right, so far we talked about 3 government loans, FHA, VA, and CalVet. And what I want to show you is a comparison chart. Let's look at the slide. So here it is. You have FHA, VA, and CalVet. They're all owner-occupied. Okay? Now what you want to learn is The loan programs, not so much. It's the mortgage here. Mortgage insurance right over here. Notice FHA is the MMI. It's a mortgage insurance. VA is also it's a guarantee. There's no MI. It's 25% of the loan amount. And CalVet is pretty much, it mirrors the VA. So that's not a problem there. I'd like you to turn to the next page of the chart. Okay, right over here. Right over here. What I am mostly concerned with is this assumability. Assumability. Okay? Assumability means that, remember the word subject to and a subject to? When FHA, remember FHA and VA can be assumed by anybody. CalVet must be assumed by CalVet, a buyer. But all of them have similarities in that the assumability, if somebody assumes, let's say a new buyer assumes the existing buyer's loan, and the new buyer defaults. If the new buyer defaults, the current existing buyer is liable. That is called the subject to. Okay, the seller is liable, not the buyer. All these, the seller is liable. Now, let's look at the deed. FHA trust deed, legal title. Okay, VA trustee, legal title. But CalVet is a land contract, has equitable title. FHA on the appraisal, they can use anybody as an appraiser. But VA and CalVet has to have a CRV certified appraiser. And the income and debt ratio, again, the VA has to have a residual income. All right, this other loan product, it's called the All-Inclusive Trust Deed, or AITD, or wraparound. It's a difficult concept, and what I want to do is just share with you my way of explaining it to you. So let's go ahead and look at the chart right here. Now, AITD, wrap, usually happens when the seller cannot sell the home and he's stuck with his loan and he wants to kind of get rid of it, you see. And the buyer usually are with bad credit and they don't qualify for a mortgage loan. So those two combinations actually create this kind of loan. Now, this is how it works. Step one, you have a value of $400,000. Your current existing loan is $250,000. You're paying $1,500 a month right now, okay? You do have an equity. Now, with wrap, he uses the equity to create a loan. There is no money, physical money, that translates into this. So the second step is that he's got the equity, so he wraps the equity, $150,000, with the existing loan, $250,000, and he creates a loan of $400,000. All right? Now, presuming he sells his property for $400,000, zero down payment. So he draws up a grant deed. He conveys title to the buyer, and title insurance records it. Okay? Now this is going to be a little bit right here, red flag, but we're going to explain that in a few minutes. Okay? So he actually hands it over to the new buyer. The new buyer, the new loan, is $400,000. He charges a little bit higher interest rate. Notice that 6, he got 7. Now the payment is $2,500. So he pays the existing $1,500, and he makes a profit of $1,000. He keeps that in pocket. Now, what kind of, he has a yield. So it's like, instead of going to a bank for 1%, so $12,000 comes from the $1,000 he makes for 12 months, and the equity, based on the equity, he makes about 8% yield. Now, the thing I want to share with you is this one right here. Remember this step that he actually handed over the title? Wow. there's a problem with this. It's called the due on sale clause. Due on sale clause is divided into two categories: alienation and acceleration. All right. Due on sale meaning lender calls your loan. That means you have to go and pay up. Alienation means if the borrower conveys title or add a new borrower without telling the lender, and the lender finds out, he calls your loan. Okay, like AITD. Now, acceleration, they also call your loan, but this one is if you don't pay your mortgage, your default on your mortgage or your property tax, they will call your loan. Now, let's look at the whole picture together. Alright, we talked about AITD, land contract. So, what does that mean? AITD, you have there's no money involved in this thing, okay? Again, it is by equity. Land contract, again, there is no money involved, transferred. But the land contract is more of an equitable title where the title is held on until you pay up the loan. AITD, you literally, you hand over the title to the borrower immediately. Now the difference, these two have no money transferred, but it's a seller carry that the money is transferred. So if your first lien is Bank of America, it's $100,000, but it needs $10,000 or more, then the seller can come in and say, I will pay this $10,000, and he draws up what is called a seller carry contract. The borrower pays the first lien, Bank of America, and he pays also the seller carry as also a second loan in a way. And the seller carry, remember, there is money that is transferred.